Hello and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe Podcast. Today we're continuing our coverage of The Bad Batch. We're talking today about Season 2, Episode 11, Metamorphosis, with myself and regular co-host Aaron McGowan. All that and more after commercial break we have no control over. Welcome back. I'm Matthew, your host. And Aaron, I gotta start by asking you, do you like Godzilla movies?
I'm gonna be honest, I have never seen a Godzilla movie.
I mean, I don't think that's true, because you have now seen 2 episodes of Godzilla movies. You've seen The Zilla Beast, which was, I think, a 3-episode part in the Clone Wars. And now you've seen Metamorphosis, which is kind of like a Godzilla Returns. So what do you think about having big monsters back? For those who don't know, these Star Wars episodes are about, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, there's an interesting series of episodes about a creature called the Zilla Beast. They are not hiding that it is a Godzilla parable in any way, shape, or form. And it's a lot of like fighting big monsters, but a lot of it is also about that Chancellor Palpatine kind of manipulates things to create a situation where this beast kind of gets loose in the city and thus causes more chaos and fear and all the good things that go with that for him, but more importantly, gets him a chance to genetically engineer and work on this beast, showing Palpatine's interest in cloning that will eventually pay off 30 years later, and just kind of general nefariousness. But here I think we're clearly seeing that where that's going, that the cloning is continuing and the Godzilla Beast is back. So yeah, that's why we're talking about Godzilla Beasts here today. Filoni has said specifically that this was always meant to be a tribute to the movies he loved. For you, Aaron, what was this episode like?
I loved it. I mean, the opening, actually not the opening shot, but like the screenshot that they used for the episode was a clone commando. And I was like, oh my God, I got so excited because my favorite book series is Republic Commandos. So I was like, clone commandos are back. Like, what is this going to be? I was a little disappointed. We didn't really focus on them, but I was actually really excited to be back on the subject of the Zilla Beast because that's always been such an open-ended thing after the Clone Wars was canceled. Like, I always felt like it's something they intended to go back to and just didn't get there in time. So I'm glad they were able to get back there in this series.
I'm really glad you had that reaction. It's funny because I think I had the exact same reaction to this as I did to the Zilla Beast episodes, which is, and it's kind of the same reaction, honestly, that I have to Godzilla movies, which is that I think the conceit of a beast that is just so primordial and elemental and huge that it forces humanity or sentient life to challenge its hubris about can we control nature. I think that's an interesting story. I think all the side plots that happen around science versus business versus government and can we deal with this beast and what do we have to do are all fascinating. I generally find, though, that when the majority of the movie is these epic scenes of people fighting a huge beast, I'm not really here for it. And that was kind of how I felt about this episode, was like, I thought the stuff with Sid was interesting. I thought the character moments were interesting. We got a lot about the Empire. But watching this, like, watching everybody fight a big animal for 20 minutes of the episode, I don't know, it just did, like, I'm really glad that people enjoyed it. I'm not saying it was wrong. It just wasn't for me.
I got you. That makes sense. It's not, it's definitely not, like, emotionally grabbing. There's not much to hang on to there, but
yeah.
I don't know. I liked it.
Now, how quickly did you see that thing and immediately think that's a Junior Zilla Beast?
I saw it open its mouth and I saw those teeth. I said, "That's a Zilla Beast." I literally wrote down "Zilla Beast!" !
Yeah. For me, I had a strong sense. It was when we first started to see it like feed on electricity. Was when I was like, "Oh, yep, this is our favorite." It
was feeding. I was like, "Oh, she's about to grow. This is about to become a bigger problem."
Yep. It's going to go from all fours to being up on 2 legs and yelling and screaming.
Yeah. Grew that extra leg on the back, too.
Yep. So let's back up a bit. Because we start with them having a confrontation with Sid, which I think has been building for a while. What'd you think about how that kind of played out?
I liked it, and I like what Tech had to say about it, because Sid is like, oh, why are you guys mad at me? Like, what's the big deal? And Omega's like, you literally left us to die. Like, that's not cool. And Sid's like, okay, whatever. Well, do you want to make money or not? Like, I have this job for you. I'll give you 30%. They're like, that's our regular cut. And they do this thing where they just kind of stare her down till she eventually ups it to 50% because they're also pissed at her and she wants them to still be her personal mercenaries. And so they kind of agree. They're like, yeah, we'll go. And she's like, okay, don't bother coming back if you don't have anything, like, for me to sell.
Yeah.
And the conversation kind of ends. And it's clear that, like, Hunter's over it. He doesn't really have an interest in going back to Sid. He's pretty much, like, ready to cut ties. And Tech is like, we should be really careful about how we cut ties with Sid because she knows so much about us. Like, we need to, like, still do this job and do our best to stay on her good side, even if we've realized she isn't someone that we, like, want to be around all the time.
Mm-hmm. I really like that from Tech. A, because it kind of sets her up as she's not this good character. She's not this evil character. She's just a self-interested character doing her thing, and everyone's going to have to deal with that. And Tech is once again being the not immoral, not super moral, just amoral. Just he is just stating facts. And what I thought was particularly interesting about that is, in general, if someone points out that if we don't keep this person happy, they could do bad things to us, depending on the moral grayness of the people involved, another option is often implied of, well, if we don't want to keep her happy, we could prevent her from doing the bad thing to us by preventing her. And, like, I'm just so used to that kind of darkness that, like, I kind of half heard it. But I don't think Tech was at all implying it, but I think Tech was also saying it in a way of, like, I think if someone then said, well, what if we don't want to keep her happy? Tech would then be happy, not be happy, but like, oh, well, yeah, the other alternative is we end her. And I don't know if we're building to that, because I think that would be a really dark place. And I don't think we're building to it, but it just for me further emphasized how much I like this side of Tech, of him. He is going to state the facts and he's going to name the options without getting into the, like, the moral, like, I think he would say it's better not to kill her. But for a lot of others, it's the, oh, how could you even suggest we could do that? And that's just not who Tech is.
Yeah. I didn't really catch that, whether or not that was implied. I just kind of thought, like, oh, that's something they're setting up for another episode, is how to deal with cutting ties with it, whether that's going to be messy or not. But yeah, it could get extra messy if they decide they just want to get rid of her.
Yeah, like, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't even think it was meant for Tech to imply it, but just the way he said it without a sort of like, now, of course, I don't mean to do this. It just, again, highlighted what I love about his character. I also really like that in that scene, Omega is just one more of the group. Like, she's no longer I really think they've accepted her now. She's not more the kid. She's just one more of the group negotiating with this person who they do business with.
I agree. It was like a unified front that they presented. It wasn't like the boys and the kid.
Yep, exactly. All right, so then we get to basically the idea is that this ship has crashed, and so Sid is sending them in to find it. And of course, not telling them what's going on. They get there, they find the beast, they unleash the beast, and the beast starts growing, starts, electricity. And what's interesting is that then they don't become the focus. Like, the Empire finds out about the beast, sends in its troops to both chase off the Bad Batch, but also to eventually capture the beast. And I don't know if this was your reaction, but I really liked that it wasn't the Bad Batch subduing the beast, because, and this is, I think, one of the things that I thought was interesting in the Zilla Beast episodes originally, is it's very easy to see it as like, oh, it's a huge monster, therefore it's evil and terrible and we should kill it. This felt, by the end of the Zilla Beast episodes, there was at least one group of the Jedi and some of the folks who were saying, like, no, just, we don't want this beast to be a danger to people, but let it live. It's fine. Put it somewhere else. And so I was glad that the Bad Batch weren't the ones actively capturing the beast. And so they were just like, they were trying to stop it from doing damage, but it was the Empire who came in, knocked it out, and have taken it prisoner again and are going to use it for more genetic nonsense.
Yeah, I agree. Like you mentioned, at the end of the Clone Wars arc, I felt like they had made the Zillo Beast a very sympathetic character. Like, we had some shots of it just, like, showing some real emotion just through its, like, little facial expressions, some groans, like... I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, it was just trying to mind its business and live under the surface of Malastare, and they interrupted it. They tried to blow it up, then they moved it to Coruscant, then it destroyed Coruscant because it just wanted to go back to sleep under the surface of Malastare. And so, yeah, I think it would have been kind of out of character for the Bad Batch to be like, oh, this random animal, we have to, like, subdue it and, like, take it out. Like, they were like...
Yeah.
They realized as it left the ship, Hunter said something about, we let it loose. Like, we have to make sure that it doesn't do damage to this village. We need to make sure that it's not killing people. Right. And that's their goal, is just to stop it from causing damage and harm. They're not necessarily trying to kill it.
Right.
They're not very successful at that. And then, the Empire comes in, chases them off, uses the same thing they used in the Clone Wars to kind of put it to sleep, and then takes it away, which was very sad to me.
It really was. I mean, and I think that's kind of the point. And I would say that is the point of a lot of the Godzilla movies as well, is sort of that it's, in the same way that, like, Frankenstein creates this creature, but the point of the book is that Frankenstein is the monster. And I think I'm by no means an expert on Godzilla films, but from the few I've seen and what I've read about them, I think that often is the idea, is that the villain is the sentient life, the humans who are trying to control this force of nature rather than the force of nature itself. And I definitely think that's what we're getting here. And I think that's a good part of transition to the other thing that I think is really kind of world building and interesting plot-wise is we get this sort of ongoing... So we know that at least 2 Kaminoans are still alive and are prisoners of the Empire. The Prime Minister and the head scientist, who I guess you can help me...
Nala Se.
Say again? Nala Se is the scientist. And what's the Prime Minister's name?
They didn't say it and I didn't
Prime Minister is perfect. He's the Prime Minister. Let's address him with respect. He'll be the Prime Minister. But yeah, we get this interesting dynamic. What do you think of how that story played out? Because they're both prisoners of the Empire, but the Empire is trying to, like, use them to basically they want Nala Se to be involved in the cloning work again.
I liked seeing Nala Se again. I saw her and I was like, she's back. Like, good. I was worried that when they took away the Prime Minister, first off, I thought he was dead. I was very surprised he was still alive. Yeah. And I was worried when they took away Nala Se that we might not get follow-up on that, because the Kamino kind of story seemed to be closed. It was like, oh, Kamino's literally destroyed. Right. So I was glad to see her back, and I think that it made a lot of sense for it to be this episode and this kind of plot where it's like, yeah, Palpatine has been working for these past, what would it be, like 2 years on this cloning effort with the Zillo Beast. And it's clear that he's moved on to different scientists than he had before, because the lead scientist in the Clone Wars even started to doubt the reasoning behind keeping the creature, and she was kind of wanting to set it free also. So it's clear that Palpatine is just finding whoever will support his cause, but maybe that's deteriorating the amount of expertise that person has.
I will say one thing that I kind of roll my eyes at but still love about Star Wars is that Star Wars doesn't object to using a character's name to tell you a lot about them. So, for example, when we get Dr. Hemlock as the, like, I was like, oh, come on. That's such a dumb name, but fine. Okay. This is an evil scientist who is doing evil, nefarious things. Dr. Hemlock, poison, got it. Okay. I'm on board.
Yeah, he's an interesting character that I want to see more of. And I know we will, because they're setting up that they need Nala Se to continue these cloning efforts, to continue maybe weaponizing the Zillo Beast, and, eventually in the future, cloning Palpatine himself. And they bring in the Prime Minister at the end kind of to try and manipulate Nala Se, because they're like, we're not getting through to her. She's been captured. We've tried everything to persuade her, and she's just not having it. And, you know, they can't be too rough with her because they still need her alive and able to function. So they bring in the prime minister, and he's like, yeah, I have a little secret weapon against Nala Se. It's this little clone. She gotta find her. Mm-hmm. And I think that sets up what the rest of our season is gonna be. Is gonna be them. Well, we also they're probably gonna meet up with Echo and Rex again, which I'm so excited about.
Yep. Yeah. We get to see what they're doing because they want to send the information about what they found out to Echo and Rex, which I think is really kind of cool.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it really does. And it's actually kind of the idea. As much as I like a show about a group of people, but I feel like this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it all links together. I wasn't bothered when in the Book of Boba Fett we had an episode about the Mandalorian because to me it all kind of tied together, and it was sort of saying like, whatever the name of this show is, it's really just about all the people at this point in time in this situation in the universe, in the galaxy. And I think kind of the same way here, like, yeah, it makes sense that like Rex and Echo are off doing their thing. Our characters doing their thing. At some point, they're going to meet up together. And so I'm looking forward to that. In terms of all the Kaminoan stuff, I'm really excited about it. I know this is a good trope, but especially after watching Galen Erso reluctantly decide to go for the Empire, in part because of like all the stuff about his daughter motivating him and him I'm not really wild about seeing another scientist decide to help the evil government because of concern over a young girl. Granted, that's not the only reason Galen does it. Galen does it in part because he thinks he can, put the flaw in and all that. But so I'm a little kind of like, okay, that's a trope you've used before. But it is one I think that they've set up well. I think they did set up a good connection between Nala Se and Omega. I think there could be some really interesting stuff to explore there. I just hope they kind of like signpost it in a way of like, this is not Galen Erso. This is a different kind of situation we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I will be interested to see what they do there because it was very clear in the first season with the Fennec Shand episode that like Nala Se does have a very caring kind of... What would it be? Just she's caring towards Omega, whether or not whether or not Omega fully recognizes it. And I think Omega obviously has a lot of trauma from Kamino and doesn't really like to talk about it typically. But when she does, she often brings up Nala Se, and it doesn't feel negative or hateful. So I think it made a lot of sense that they're like, we need to bring this character back, and we're trying to get her to work for Palpatine. What can we do? Use Omega. And I think that gives a good kind of antagonist for our next few episodes of now, even though the Bad Batch is supposedly dead, the Empire is going to come after them anyways because they really need Omega. Whether or not she's alive, they need to find her. And so they're hoping she's alive and they're going to be hunting them.
Exactly. And I think that's going to be really interesting, especially seeing, how this is all playing out and stuff like that. I think, this is one of those interesting stories where, to some extent, we do know what is and isn't successful, in that one of the things they said in the Clone Wars is that one of the reasons why they wanted to breed the Zilla Beast, and I think they make an offhand reference to this as well, but is that, like, it has these scales, this body armor that is just so impenetrable that there's at one point talk about, like, could you create that and make that usable for, to basically make a new kind of Beskar almost, to make something. And clearly, 18 years after this, Stormtrooper armor is not impenetrable. But another 30 years after that, the cloning of Force-capable creatures, beings, does have a thing. So I think, like on some level, I think we know that Nala Se is not gonna, that probably they'll rescue her, or that maybe she gets killed, or something like that. But we do know that the cloning efforts continue. So I'm definitely interested to see where it's going.
Yeah, me too. And something I just kind of put together while you were talking is like, now that the Empire is out to find Omega, anyways, they don't care. Like, they thought the Bad Batch was dead, but now they're going to come find them anyways. It doesn't really matter how they break ties with Sid. Like, the Batch doesn't know that yet, but even if Sid says they're alive, that doesn't do too much because the Empire's already after them. That's kind of the thing they were trying to avoid.
Right. Well, and I do think that might be an interesting moment because I could kind of see Sid's character going either way. I could see, like, I kind of now want someone in the Empire to go to Sid, and we get to see a kind of maker where either Sid is, when her back's up against the wall, she sells out the team, which is, you know, unfortunate, but I think wouldn't be totally surprising. But I also think it's possible that maybe she has some regret over what just happened, or she does have some sense of loyalty, and that when the Empire tries to go to her, she refuses to, like, you know, turn her back on them or whatever. And I think that could be a really interesting moment of, like, really testing who is Sid.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. But those two things, those two plot lines are going to come
and
together.
I almost think the difference could be if the Empire's like, where's the Bad Batch? Sid be like, let me tell you. But if they're like, where's Omega? She might pause. Because I feel like her and Omega have had some good bonding, and Omega's always shown so much compassion. Omega was the reason that they helped Sid get her bar back. Omega was the reason they have done so much for her. And so I feel like that could, I don't know. I definitely see her turning in the Bad Batch unless that becomes part of the conversation.
Yeah. I could even see it being kind of a Lando situation where she makes a deal with them, but her deal is like, I'll turn them over to you, but you have to leave Omega. You know, don't bring her to me or something. And they say they'll do that when clearly they won't, and it's only when she finds out that Omega's in danger that she switches sides. Like, Star Wars hires as writers. Clearly we've got this whole thing.
Of course.
Any other kind of last things? I think it's a pretty short episode. There's not too much to say about it. Obviously, it's planting some really good seeds, I think, for where the rest of the season's going to take us. Any other last things you wanted to comment on?
I mean, I think just the thing with the villagers, I was like, dang, the Empire is really just collecting and killing them all. Like, we saw children getting on that ship, and the commandos were just rounding them up, which I also was very upset of the portrayal of the commandos. Not because I don't believe that they would follow orders like that, because in the books, there is a book after the Empire where they're still working for the Empire, and they do follow orders, and they do kill Jedi. It's just that commandos are not supposed to be foot soldiers. They're supposed to be specialized, like, teams that do high-priority jobs. They're not supposed to just be, I don't know, rounding up citizens. So, that being said...
And there's a couple... I would say there's a couple times in those books when they do more kind of like what they see as menial tasks, and they object pretty strongly to it.
I did notice that we kind of got some shots focusing a bit on this, like, who seems to be a commander of the commandos. So I would be interested to know who that is, even if he's, like, kind of a baddie. I just am so obsessed with commandos, I hope that they maybe are the ones hunting the Bad Batch down, you know? Maybe they're going to be a bigger part of this, because they seem to be kind of Palpatine's little dogs at the moment, kind of doing what he needs.
Yeah, and I think one thing that Star Wars has been doing more and more, and for the most part I think doing this well, but some problems for sure, is that, you know, we all know the story about how Disney decided that the extended universe canon was not canon anymore, and it was only going to be their own canon going forward. Lots of people have lots of opinions on that. I don't want to get into that. But they have, I think, been doing a lot of really interesting jobs of like, okay, we're going to take little bits and pieces from those canon novels and bring them in. And I think especially a lot of that's happened with the clones. And so, yeah, seeing an actual Republic commando and having that be named on screen, I think is a big deal. And will be a big deal if we go forward with that. So we'll see. Then also, I think actually ties into one other fun connection that I noticed. That actually ties into one other interesting connection I noticed in this episode. And it's subtle, and I don't know if they're ever going to make it explicit, but I think it's worth commenting on. Earlier, both in this season, but especially in last season, we had this plot line of, you know, the very competent clones, but who were also a lot of trouble, possibly being replaced by the Empire by the cheaper, not quite as good, but they can get the job done, you know, stormtrooper conscripts. And that's been a tension. And so I think there's an interesting thing there of there's a real parallel to that with the Empire's gotten rid of the troublesome cloners who were too independent, and now they have their own cloners, but these cloners aren't as good, and they're struggling because they wanted to get rid of the Kaminoans, but they still need some of the Kaminoans' expertise. And I just think that's a fun dynamic, because I think that's a big part of, as empires establish themselves. It's just like, we only want our people doing things, but when you're valuing loyalty above all else, like, you lose a lot of expertise. And I'm just kind of, I don't know if they'll make that an explicit connection, but I think it's definitely there, and I'm curious to see how that will play out.
I agree. That kind of is how I was feeling about the Kaminoans too, is like, they realized they kind of shot themselves in the foot by destroying Camino, because even though you have the research and you have the scientists, she's not willing to help you. And now you have to try to find people who can try to work up to that level of genius, but you never know.
Exactly.
Yeah. One thing that I just put together right now is we're definitely getting more Crosshair. They're definitely going to call him up, be like, hey, we need that little chick that was running around with your squad. And he's going to be like, let me tell you, I've been waiting for this moment. So I really hope that we get Crosshair and the Commandos hunting the Bad Batch.
Yeah, I could see that. Especially because the Commandos are another kind of... In many ways, I think the Bad Batch was a stand-in for the Commandos. In terms of, as you said, they're not regs. They're not the normal people. They're, like, genetically bred. They're enhanced. They're, like, or specially trained, whatever it is. They have all these additional skills, which kind of is what the Bad Batch is. And we saw Crosshair really kind of like chomping at the bit when he's with either regular clones or with the new conscripts of the stormtroopers. So yeah, it'll be fun to see like how that all plays out.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap up now, where we will have bonus content for the patrons. This is a very special day for Star Wars, because not only did the new episode of Clone Wars come out, but the new episode of Mandalorian came out. Both Aaron and I are kind of tired because we watched both of those. Aaron and I will be having a brief discussion of the new episode of Mandalorian in our bonus content for patrons. And so I definitely suggest checking that out. But also, we're going to do double duty for the next couple of weeks. So this podcast will be doing episodes on the Bad Batch every week. We will also be doing episodes on The Mandalorian every week. Ashley Coffin, who's been with me for all of The Mandalorian up till now, and Book of Boba Fett, is going to come back. I think Paul Hoppy's taking a break, but we might get him in for an episode or two. We're recording with Aaron early on Wednesday, so hopefully these Clone Wars episodes will come out Wednesday afternoon. The Bad Batch the Mandalorian episodes, I'm recording with Ashley because Ashley works. Those are going to go out probably late Wednesday night or early Thursday morning. But don't worry, we will have coverage for you of The Mandalorian as well. And if you're watching one show but not the other, we will try and keep the two separate so that, you don't get spoiled on one or the other, if you're not the kind of maniac like me who's watching them both the day they come out. Actually, I'll ask you this. Which did you watch first, The Mandalorian or The Bad Batch?
I watched The Bad Batch first. Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate your loyalty and dedication. That's where it will be. I did not, but only because I timed it out so that I could do a rewatch of season 2 of The Mandalorian, go right into the new episode, and then watch The Bad Batch. So it was kind of like freshest in my mind. That makes sense. So obviously check all that out. If you're a patron, you get the special content. It's really worth it. You'll get our thanks. You get other kind of bonus opportunities as well. You can find all the information by just looking at the show notes or by going to the website for this podcast and all my podcasts, theethicalpanda.com. There also you'll find a way to contact us. What do you think of all of this? Would love to hear your thoughts. People have been sending in some ideas that I've been kind of bringing in, but they wanted me not to mention them. Keep it anonymous. But other people, if you want to have your thoughts read on air, your questions discussed, whatever it is, send us feedback. We've gotten some. We're going to do a feedback episode probably when the show ends. We'll see. But you can send that all to Matthew at theethicalpanda.com, or just find all of our contact information at theethicalpanda.com. But I'm not the only content creator here. Aaron creates a lot of awesome stuff. So, Aaron, or as I should say, perhaps Lady Tano, where can we find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok as Lady Tano Creates. I used to have periods in there. They're gone. I changed my username. It's just Lady Tano Creates, all one word. Yeah, I mostly do cosplay stuff. I'm in the process of remaking some Leku for my Ahsoka Season 7 cosplay. I'm slowly but surely working through making her armor as well. Yeah, I was on vacation for a week and I'm still kind of recovering from that. So my content has taken kind of a brief pause, but I have some crazy stuff going on this week as well. My company's moving locations, so I'll be busy, but Hopefully next week I'll get back to it. I'll have some more regular content, some more crafting for everyone. Also, I am creating an original character. So I've put up a couple polls about like how people think I should dress. I have some outfit options and stuff. So if you want to see me also creating that as I go, just go ahead and drop a follow. Come along on my journey.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I'm not a cosplayer, but someone who really enjoys kind of seeing. I've always enjoyed it, and seeing behind the scenes has really just been awesome. So definitely check out all the things Erin is doing. Check out all the things The Ethical Panda, and of course, most importantly, have a good day.